First off, I'd like to thank the folks at Allen Press for having us down and talk to you all today. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scholarly publishing and what the future may hold. As everyone well knows, this is an industry that's undergoing great change, and the change is happening in the constructs of a larger digital revolution in media. But when I look at scholarly publishing, there are real challenges ahead. But I think the number one takeaway is that disruption does not equal destruction. And what we want to see here is that no matter how loud some people shout or how dire some of the predictions are about the industry, what we see through the research that we do is an industry evolving and adapting, not one that's teetering on the brink of a collapse. So my perspective, as said, I'm with Simba Information. I've headed up the business information group in professional publishing since 2005. So we cover STM, science, technical, medical. We also cover legal publishing and tax regulatory publishing. And we do some reports on the business information markets, so looking at brokerage and financial, things like Thomson Reuters and Bloomberg systems, and also current awareness, news and research, and credit information companies and marketing information. So we do look at the scholarly area, but I'm looking broader at all of professional publishing and information markets as an entire subsection of publishing and media. So what's on tap? I'm going to talk a little bit about some dire predictions that we've seen, and we're going to go through some of the market forecasts and a few big picture items related to what we see happening in the industry. Now, it's important to listen to everyone's view of the marketplace, and I think it's just also important to take everything with a few grains of salt. Analysts, academics, publishing industry insiders, they're all doing their best to take a look at the current state of affairs and prognosticate, look forward to what might happen next. But people sometimes are only exposed to parts of the market, or they have their own views colored by their jobs or the companies they work for, or their surroundings, their politics, or their histories with certain publishers or institutions. So, it's important to remember when anyone says that the sky is falling, or that the sky is going to be bright forever on the other side. In June 2010, this gentleman, Claudio Espesi, an analyst, issued a report suggesting that publishing leader Reed Elsevier was in trouble and that they should pursue a breakup of the company. He said they were in denial of the magnitude of the issues potentially affecting scientific publishing. And he said that it was a good idea to maybe look into breaking up specifically the Elsevier piece, the STM piece of the business. He asked in that report, you see the word here, if, for example, the funders of the research, the governments, the foundations, and corporations will they continue to allocate the funding on the basis of prestige in publications, or will they start rewarding the impact of individual research? He said it's plausible to imagine a world in which the value of the franchise of each individual journal decreases and the value of the franchise of individual articles increases. And if the impact factor was replaced, journals would lose their importance, publishers would be left competing for administrative fees and just managing peer review, and in turn their revenue and margins would decline. Now, Mr. Espesi's job is to provide critical analysis and highlight real risks to the companies and industries he writes about. And he was doing that here. The hypothetical he presents does represent the real threat for publishers, but it's more than 3 years later, we haven't seen it develop. The prestige factor in journals is still in place. There are movements to develop new journals that operate on an open basis, but command prestige in their own right. That is happening. There are new article metrics being developed, and those are in the infancy stage, and they may turn out to be successful, but we don't have any indication that their success will take prestige away from the established closed access journals. There's also no indication that the academic community is ready to turn en masse away from the old system, which would need to happen for the type of collapse that he's talking about. Tenure review boards would have to completely change. Younger scientists and researchers would have to be convinced that their careers wouldn't be sidetracked by ignoring the old path. And we're not seeing this. What we're seeing is, as I said, disruption does not equal destruction. Now, Asbesti acknowledges that the open access doesn't need to be a threat. He talked about if gold open access was to develop, that would actually be beneficial to a company like Elsevier because it would provide the same fees and revenue streams that they have on top of subscriptions that they already get. And it would probably lower costs for them. So, in fact, that's kind of what has happened so far. Gold open access has become, for the major publishers, a new revenue stream that's bringing in money for them and reducing costs. And some of the research councils we've seen have advocated gold as the path. At least now, there's been pushback, of course, against that. But there is a warning to be heeded in Asbesti's report, and that is that alternatives to the impact factor are being developed, and depending on how widely the scientific community adopts these alternatives, there will be an impact on traditional journal publishing models. So let's talk a little bit maybe about alternative metrics. These are the metrics. They have no use for feet. Okay, so several startups are working on building new reputation metrics in science, including the ones that you see here: Academic EDU, Mendeley, ResearchGate, PLOS, Google Scholar, Altmetrics, Plum Analytics, and Impact Story. Now, when you look at the first three, these have already passed 2 million users, and they're growing pretty fast. PLOS and Google Scholar are also important players moving towards alternative metrics. Some of these other ones are constructing metrics at the author level and article level that reveal, impact in new and interesting ways. Let's take a look at some of the categories that these fall into. So you have inbound citation metrics. A few years ago, Google Scholar started displaying inbound citation counts for papers, counts of how often a given paper was cited by other papers. Scientists have started to use these inbound citation counts as a way to demonstrate the impact of their work, and they're increasingly including them in job and grant applications. Academia EDU, Mendeley, ResearchGate are in the readership metrics area, and they're helping scientists to understand readership metrics around their research. And these sites tell academics how many people are reading their work, as well as some demographic data about those readers. Follower counts that are developing. Scientists increasingly want direct relationships with their audience that they haven't had in the past. So in the pre-web era, scientists used to print out papers and read them in their labs in a non-trackable way, and now people are looking ways to track those. And, increasingly, scientists are reading and sharing papers online, and these reputation metrics are derived from the online activity, and two others will emerge, and that includes the commenting metrics. As scientists increasingly comment on papers online, metrics will emerge to reflect the most discussed papers. And then recommendations, who's recommending what papers. Scientists increasingly share paper recommendations online, and metrics are going to start coming out from that. To distinguish between mere popularity and genuine impact, these metrics will take into account the reputation of the scientist doing the commenting or recommending. So So now we'll move into another dire prediction. So this is from a librarian's perspective. Rick Anderson wrote this on Scholar and Kitchen. His publishers seem to be relying increasingly on libraries rather than individual subscribers to keep their revenue streams healthy, and current trends in subscription prices and library budgets do not bode well for the future of that arrangement. Either the current trends will change or there will be a collapse in the system. There is no third option. That's pretty dark. The facts are, yes, the academic customer group is the largest customer group of the STMS publishing industry that we track. But in reality, academic customers make up less than 30% of the market. If you counted society members as who are have individual subscriptions into that number, it would be a little larger, 34%. But still, the rest is made up of corporate, government, individual, hospitals, ads, and promotions. So as an industry, it's pretty well diversified in terms of customers and the revenue streams. Now, the serials crisis is several decades old at this point. There's been no collapse in the system. Now, you can say that open access changes that and raises the possibility of collapse. Throw in the fact that we've been in kind of an economic malaise as a country and as a global economy. That's also a factor which could raise the risk of this system collapsing. But even with that, we're not seeing signs of it or of the reversal of the trends that he's mentioned. So what we're seeing is that all constituents are adapting, they're experimenting, they're negotiating, they're selectively cutting, they're deploying alternative strategies, and they're finding a way forward. Another dire prediction is about the tipping point that's been talked about often with open access, that at some point we're going to reach a stage of critical mass and journals would be rendered useless and publishers would just exit the business and this kind of thing would happen. There are indications that a tipping point has already been reached in terms of critical mass and open access, but there has been very little impact on the journal or journal article as a central piece of scientific and academic communication. This study that was put out found that the percentage of articles published in 2008 that are open access in 2013 were between 42 and 48%. Now, this is not a great study for projecting the future because it doesn't really indicate when they were turned open access. So we don't know, per se, the number of articles in 2013 that are going to be open access next year or beyond. But what it does show is that there's plenty of research that's being made open access and close to 50%. Now, the funder open access mandate, it drove publishers to the gold open access path to be able to offer some alternative and collect fees that they needed. And that's now what we're seeing is that's a growing revenue stream. But what hasn't changed is that traditional subscriptions still make sense and are still the most cost-effective choice for high-usage titles. So we're seeing an evolution, not a cliff. And with that, some new models are gaining traction. We live in a time when library patrons want immediate access to even more journal content, and libraries are searching for ways to meet those demands with even tighter budgets. So we've seen the emergence of pay-per-view or transactional access, which might be a way of future and some alternative to big deals. It's not seen as a replacement, but rather as a supplement to other existing models. And another emerging option is the read-only short-term loan or article rental. And it has a low cost and offers 24-hour access, however, it's not available for download or print. And each use equals another payment. Okay, crystal ball time. So we have projections currently to 2016, so we start with, and 2013 we haven't actualized the numbers yet, so that's kind of projected as well at this point. But so we're looking at that period 2013 into 2016. And what we're seeing is modest growth forecast for most segments. Professional segments of tax, business publishing, and legal publishing are projected to grow over 3%. Scientific publishing is under 2%. That's the orange reddish line there. Medical will post slightly negative growth, and social sciences are staying flat and starting to head towards 1% growth in 2016. And the dotted line is all the markets together. And this is based on percent change year in, year out is the measure here. So this table takes a look at the book market across all those segments and how it plays out. Here the story is not good for book publishing overall. Science and technical and medical are projected to continue to decline more than 2%. Social sciences also decline, but under 1%. Book publishing in professional markets, legal publishing and tax business, they'll start to recover in 2015 and 16, but still growing 1 to 1.5% respectively. Okay, here in this line graph, we're looking at journals, again, in all these segments. And the journal market is performing well across the board. Most key segments forecast to post growth between 2.7 and 3.5%. Medical publishing is the outlier. Medical journals are more dependent on advertising as a source of revenue, and that market has been subdued ever since the recession, and there's been changes in the way pharmaceutical companies advertise their products, and that's hurt medical journals. But the rest of them you see clustered in that section above 2.5 and moving along quite nicely for that business. So online services are to post solid growth. And here this chart to measure is the total revenue instead of the percent change. They're growing across all segments of professional and scholarly publishing. Online services are. This activity keeps the market moving forward. You can't transition from a print-based publishing unless you have online services and content. Legal, tax, and scientific segments developed cornerstone products, in their spaces a long time ago, so you see their revenue associated with online services higher on the chart and far above social sciences and medical, but everyone here is growing for the most part. Social sciences are flat. So this is the scholarly professional market as a whole, all subjects, all segments, and looking at the individual publishing activities next to each other. And here you can see what I've been talking about is that the projected growth rate of publishing activities for online services and journals are really producing the growth. Books are going to improve, but they're still declining. Newsletters and loose leafs are either dying or they're being transitioned into online services. And then the other category consists of conferences, symposia, audio tapes, video, kind of the throw-in category, and that's not performing great. But you see online services and journals at the top and everything else underneath, and the middle line again is the market, and that's what's carrying the space. And with that, we have the publishing pie. So because of this, what's happening, the trend that we're seeing, you'll see the publishing pie start to shift with online services and journals gaining share at the expense of books, newsletters, loose leaves, directories, and other. So we see in that first chart was the 2012, yes, 12, and now we're looking at 2016 projected, and what we see is books lose 3 points of share compared to 2012. Online services gain 3 points of share, and journals gain 2, and the other two categories lose the difference. So where else is the sun shining? Well, here we have mobile business professional information spend. And information specialized for mobile consumption is going to soar about 45%. We're looking into 2016 and become 14% of the total professional business information spending, up from where was it, about 3% in 2011. So if you can produce products into the mobile space, you should do it. This is one of the places that's going to be growing. Ad dollars are going to continue to shift from traditional print media to digital platforms as offerings become more robust and penetrate the tablet, e-reader, and smartphone. Publishers need to respond to those surges. And we're now in the middle of a new transition where the user demands the ability to consume content anywhere. So that's what's driving this. We've seen some scientific journal content is become available on mobile since Cyverse Mobile from Elsevier and EBSCO Host Mobile. So the opportunities to have information anytime and anywhere are constantly growing. And in a similar vein, ebooks is another space. Although the book market we talked about is having its problems as a whole, ebooks are growing quite well. This table takes a look at the leading publishers that Eric started introducing to you, and takes a look at what percentage the ebooks made up of their total professional book business over these 3 years, 2010, jump ahead to 2013, and then 2016. And we see, of course, the bars jump up. Springer kind of was ahead of the game. They jumped really strong into ebooks, and they've done well with it. So we're projecting out they're going to be about 50% of their book business in 2016. Most of these players are well above 20% when we look at 2016. The key here is adoption of tablets. There's been studies that have found that those who own a device are far more likely to read at least a full chapter from, if not a full ebook. And most of the projections in technology markets seem to think that the tablet is going to kill off the e-reader. The e-reader is not built for long term. So it's really going to be tablet adoption that's driving this market. So we'll get down to the big picture and wrap up this presentation. We'll look at some big picture items. The impact of big data. We are expecting corporate and government institutions to shift investment from intellectual property to topic-specific outsourced expertise and productivity solutions. The value and insights harvested by big data technologies come from unstructured and uncopyrighted sources. Things found in mobile devices, enterprise systems, internet-based information. These sources are going to drive that shift. Various types of institutions are expected to invest more heavily in technology that integrates external sources of information into proprietary delivery platforms. Additionally, wider availability of free or low-cost information access, along with increasing enterprise information requirements, are going to force information providers, to better define their value in comparison to those who provide productivity tools. Another big item is the journal. We're seeing in the future that the journal is going to have to be reimagined and reinvented. There's some thought that most of the online content distributed by STM Publishing remains in a sort of print facsimile. It may be in XML or run through some adaptive content management system on the back end, but it remains this kind of text-based world. Some publishers are starting to allow non-textual materials through their systems, but these content forms are not widely embraced. So there needs to be a reimagining of the journal. How that takes shape is going to be different by each discipline. There's a market opportunity to throw out the journal playbook and create a new, more imaginative conduit to present and distribute the scholarly research. Another thing that we see going on is that everybody is a publisher. That's another trend that's going to be happening. Right now in February, LinkedIn, which would be more on the professional side, but they were allowing certain folks to publish as influencers, in their network, and now they've opened it up to just anyone to be able to publish through LinkedIn. And they can compete in a professional space because they already have an existing business that is paying the bills. It's profitable for them, so that can subsidize a publishing arm, and they can go and compete and take people down. They don't have to rely on advertising like B2B magazines or other industries, and we know advertising is declining. LinkedIn has annual revenues of $1.5 billion, and virtually none of that has anything to do with its publishing operations. It puts them in a strong position, stronger position than a traditional publisher that has to rely on advertising or subscriptions to derive its revenue. Another example of everybody's publishing is the role of blogs is expanding. We see this in marketing, people using it as content marketing, visibility, traffic, SEO, to use blogs. Companies of all kinds see that they have to come out with their own content. And we see it also in legal publishing. Blogs have become quite popular and an alternative for dialogue about legal issues. And the more that law students and lawyers and law professors choose to blog, the more content's going to be written, the more it becomes a resource to everyone, especially if it's placed in context with accompanying primary legal research, case law, statutory law, legal news, if it all can be packaged together. And it doesn't need to be done by a major legal publisher to curate all this stuff. Because it's out there, it can be a startup company that has technology acumen. So we see law blogs curated by RSS readers and apps such as Flipboard, which runs on curated tweets. The story behind the tweet and accompanying images are displayed on Flipboard, and it's kind of like a magazine. And publishers are also using Twitter as part of their publishing platform, and they could do the same. Down the line, you could see universities taking a role in developing blog-based publishing networks. If a network were to be built where you have the professors, students, professional alumni all blogging, then you have a learning network. And the costs are reduced, learning is advanced, and the brand of the law school is extended. The final big picture item is, of course, advertising declining. We talked a little bit about that in medical publishing, but in B2B magazines and trade publishing, the advertising market's forecast to be $3.6 billion less than it was in 2006 and 2016. So that's a 2.4% compound annual decline. And some likely strategies: quickly revitalize core print products, integrate emerging e-media and mobile platforms, position the business as multi-platform brands that provide a variety of services to their audience, focus on customized content, integrate vertical search portals, produce multimedia digital editions, social media components. All in all, this means kind of changing the mentality a little bit. Relying on traditional top-down reporting isn't going to cut it anymore. Your subscribers need and want information that you simply cannot keep on top of all the time. So you need to keep your subscriber base, your industry, and your subject discipline engaged. And you need to be really looking at the idea of publishing with them instead of publishing at them. Thank you.